Hey, nonprofits, you're going to love this episode. I appreciate Dan Lyles so much. We together are setting the record straight about consignment. If you don't know anything about consignment, if you've used consignment opportunities before, have questions, this is the episode for you. Please enjoy, buckle up. But before we get in the episode, do me a favor, subscribe to the channel, like the episode, and leave us a comment. Reach out to Dan, thank him for his tutelage. Reach out to us if you have any other questions. There's links in the show notes. Enjoy the show, setting the record straight about consignment. I wanted to, you and I we've been toying around with this idea and ping ponging it a little bit, or at least it was in my brain, setting the record straight about consignment. So it's like, I thought, having a good friend of the program, a good friend of HGA's on, Dan Lyles, obviously, everybody, you recognize him. He's been on many times before and will continue to come on. Okay, Dan has a tremendous amount of experience selling consignment, not just travel experiences, but just like consigned items. So I want you to get into your definition, your working definition of it, but we've been partners for a bit now too. And so you sell HGA items. We are a consignment company. So I just think, we're not going to get opposing views, but some really cool thoughts for the audience. And like I said, just wanted to set the record straight about consignment items in the nonprofit fundraising space, what they mean to folks, how they can be used. We'll do a little bonus at the end as well that you and I were talking about earlier today. So yeah, just excited to have the conversation with you, man. So thanks so much for coming.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Trevor, for having me back, man. I appreciate it. It's always fun to chat with you and touch on these subjects. It seems like every time we do this, it's from like a LinkedIn post. I'm real active on LinkedIn. I think a lot of people see that, and it always comes from a LinkedIn post. And this came out of that again, because I don't know if you remember the backstory, but basically I had posted that an auctioneer in our industry, we kind of have a fundraising auctioneer Facebook group that we're all in. There's like 1,500 of us. I don't think that they're all fundraising auctioneers. Really, there's only like 2 or 3 per state that are top tier auctioneers, but there's a lot of us in that group. And someone that is very active in that page had posted that they got reached out to by a consignment company and said that this company was telling them that there were auctioneers out there selling 30 trips at a time in one auction, and that they didn't believe in consignment. They didn't like consignment and didn't want to do it, and was asking about this company, which it wasn't you guys, by the way, but trying to figure out if they were legit. And of course, a lot of us who do it on a regular basis were chiming in. I'm like, yeah, I've sold 30 to an auction before. So I love consignment. I'm a huge fan of it. So I think that's what started this whole conversation. Was a lot of the auctioneers are saying, hey, you are leaving a lot of money on the table for your clients by not offering this up. So that's what started all this.
Yeah, I love that. I love that we have that much going on in the space, actually, whether it's a private Facebook group or, like you said, you and I are both very prolific on LinkedIn. And it's cool because we get, this space, the development space, event space, fundraisers in general need to be served, right? And you and I have had an agreement, and every guest that comes on the Hey Nonprofits webinars, live webinars, and podcasts, it's like, let's give our best information away for free. And this is no different, right? And like you said, I love that framework, and I think it'll segue really, really nicely into the conversation about setting the record straight about consignment, because is it right for every single event? I'm the consignment guy. Right. No, as a matter of fact, it's not right for every single event. Is it right for more events more often than not? I would venture a guess, yes. I'm actually, I don't have a problem getting on that soapbox, so to speak. But nonetheless, it's not everything. It's not meant to replace your, fund a need, paddle raise. It's not meant to, that. It's a value add. And you and I, once again, we're going to get in the weeds a little bit, because I have all sorts of opinions. Because I got 10 years experience, with HGA items that we create and that help in the, the golden ticket strategy, the silent auction, the live auction, the paddle drop, different incentives and different games. So we'll get into each one of those as well. A working definition, though, Dan, from someone who, like, you've sold 32 items at one time. You've sold art on cruise ship that I'm assuming, was consigned, right? Like, for our space, for fundraising purposes, your working definition of consignment, if you don't mind.
Okay, for a lot of our nonprofit guests that are listening or watching this, so consignment is when you are selling an item that you have not yet purchased or that you don't own, and you're selling it for well, basically on behalf of somebody else, like HGA in this case. And then there's a cost involved in that. And then when we sell that item, we're typically trying to sell it much higher than the cost so that the nonprofit can keep the difference.
Absolutely. And just let's give a practical example. So it's like a Tuscany trip for two, for instance, that's going to be featured in a live auction that you could be doing this weekend, for instance. It's in the live auction and it's $2,500 is the reserve price. I think that's an important distinction as well. There is a cost. However, it is not an expense. It's a cost of goods sold. I don't want to get into an accounting exercise. However, the reserve price, which is what we call it, and if you disagree with that, please let me know what moniker you use to ascribe. But a reserve price or cost to the organization, let's just say it's $2,500 and it's in a live auction. And it's in a live auction where there's 6 items in totality, and this is one of them, and it's the only consignment piece. Talk about to the audience how you would structure that night of for the live auction, for instance.
Yeah, well, you are using the correct terminology. For auctioneers, we call it a reserve price, but oftentimes we'll say consignment because when I'm selling something at auction for reserve price, that's the price I need to hit in order to sell it. But when I'm trying to sell something on behalf of a nonprofit organization where I'm trying to make them the most amount of money that I can, typically the reserve price, which would be your price, $2,500 for that Tuscany trip, I'm trying to get like 100% markup, right? I'm not even thinking selling that thing until I hit $5,000 because I want to make them a nice spread on that. Tuscany would typically, we see it top out anywhere from $6,000 to $9,000. For me, what I do mentally is I say, okay, once I've doubled what your reserve price would be, once I hit $5,000, I'll start thinking multiple at that point. So I'm getting to $6,000, I'm getting to $7,000. How many bid cards do I still have up? Can I roll it back? Can I sell it to a high bidder? Can I sell it to the underbidder and then do a who else wants one and see if I can sell more of them? So it's kind of a gauge there that I'm trying to figure out, okay, at what point can we get the most amount of people involved and make the most amount of money for the nonprofit?
Love it. Love it. Yeah. And we did a whole episode about who else wants one, about selling multiples in the live auction, which is another really cool thing, actually. I want to get back to the costs and I want to get into the no risk, no exposure piece that you and I have spoken ad nauseum, but I definitely think it's good for the audience to hear it. But once again, really cool thing about consignment items like the HGA Tuscany item for two. I'm just using this as an example. We have, 60 different destinations, for instance, that could fit in an event. But an item like that can be sold, which is really, really cool, more than one time. You're creating a science around it with regard to, who else wants one and bid cards being in the air and what have you, and getting the excitement of the evening in that live auction setting. But in comparison, for folks that don't have a tremendous amount of experience with consignment, I want to go ahead and say, number one, that this Tuscany example or any consigned item is not meant to replace donation items. As a matter of fact, like we're very pro donated item. We're here to fill in the gap, so to speak. Do you agree with that? Consignment items don't need to be the end all be all for your live auction. They can create a tremendous amount of live auction success in a short amount of time. However, once again, we're here to bring the level of the live auction, for instance, up a little bit higher. At least that's my opinion. Speak to that if you don't mind, Dan.
Yeah, well, we're on the same page there. So for me personally, as an auctioneer, my sweet spot is 5 to 7 items. I don't like to go over that. I can go higher than that. I did an auction recently and they had 16 items. But I think that once you pass 7, you start getting into a little bit of bidder fatigue and you got to be really good on the microphone or a really high impact, energetic auctioneer to keep that attention before you get to the paddle raise. So with 5 to 7 items, typically when you go to a board and you say, hey, we're going to go after the free stuff first, right? Who's got the beach house that they can lend out? Who's got the mountain house? Who knows a chef that we can get a chef experience? Who's got ties with a hotel that we can maybe get a staycation with like a dinner donated, right? Who's got a bourbon collection? We can throw 5 or 6 bottles together and do that. Okay, we got 5 items. Well, really, we need about 7 to make it great. Okay, nobody's come up with any trips yet. We got a cool beach house, but for us in South Carolina or North Carolina, we're traveling 3.5 hours when we get to Charleston, right? We're looking at experiences that not everybody can get because from a value standpoint, that's what people are willing to pay for. They'll buy the beach house, they'll buy the mountain house because they're always going to do weekend getaways. But when we're talking about like 7-night stay, all inclusive, where you start speaking about bucket list items like Italy, for instance. I mean, we've sold so many trips to Italy. That was probably the big ticket item. It used to be Mexico, in Mexico's been a little bit harder to sell. It's back on the table now, but Italy's been the big play this year. I see a lot of people wanting to do Napa on our side on the East Coast. I see a lot of people wanting to do Africa. So what you're doing is you're giving your donors, your attendees, an opportunity to buy something very experiential, a vacation package. They could go out and try to source this for themselves, but they want to get involved. They are having fun at the live auction. They want to put up their bid card. We're giving them an opportunity to do that and to get a vacation out of it. So it's like a win-win. Everybody gets involved and takes advantage of that.
Agreed. And I saw this recently and it really stuck with me. It's like experiences outperform stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
Always.
Like stuff for the sake of just throwing, oh, hey, we got this.
Always.
And that's why, once again, we're not high pressure with this, but they're a really lovely fundraising tool. And you mentioned 5 to 7 items in the live auction kind of being your sweet spot. Well, each one of those items takes about 3 minutes to sell, right?
2.5, 3 minutes. Sure.
So if you have an item, to Mexico or a Tuscany item, for instance, and you're able to sell that thing 6, 8 times and net the organization over 10K net in 3 minutes, that's positive, right? Like that's just a really cool thing.
This is where that other auctioneer, I think, was missing the mark, because he was only thinking, okay, if I've got to pay $2,500, $3,500 for this experience, I'm taking that money out of the room. But see, what he's not calculating in that whole idea, and a lot of people think that way, right? They think, oh, is this taking it out of the paddle raise? I am a firm believer that once you get people to start spending money, they'll carry on spending. And I'm also a firm believer, we can jump into this, that your silent auction participant, your live auction participant, your paddle raise participant, they're not always the same people. They don't always cross over. So what he was missing is, sure, he would have 5 items, or let's say he had 7 items, and he had the same amount of items that I did in an auction, but he's going to sell those 7 fully donated items, and that's fantastic. Maybe he makes $25,000 for a live auction, right? And then I come in with my 5 donated items, which is fantastic. And then I've got 2 extra items that I can sell multiple times. What happens if somebody really wants to go on that Punta Cana all-inclusive and as one of my items, and a couple of people, 2-3 people want to go on the Italy trip, right? And I run that up to $7,500. We got how much? What's the cost on the Italy? Is it $3,500? Do you know?
$2,500.
$2,500. Okay, so run it up $7,500. You got $2,500 costs in there, $5,000, and then I start selling it 3 times, add an extra 15 grand on my live auction, and then I got Punta Cana, and you've got a price on that of, I think, about $1,800.
It's $1,800. Yeah.
Yeah, and so run that up to $3,500, $4,000. Do a Who Else Wants One and sell that 7-8 times. So all of a sudden, his auction that he could only get $25,000 for, doubling, tripling, quadrupling the amount of items that I get in my live auction. I take that $25,000 auction, I make a $50,000 auction.
Yeah,
totally. A live auction. So that's where he's missing the mark. It's our job as auctioneers to try to make as most money for our clients as possible. And if you're stepping over dollars to pick up pennies, you're doing it wrong, right? You got to have the opportunity to be able to multiply those items so that you can sell as much as you can in the shortest amount of time.
I love that. I love that you brought up that point, doubling, even tripling the live auction scenario. What is also really, really cool that I heard you say is that the live auction consignment items, for instance, do not rob from the fund and need. That's absolutely true. I agree with you wholeheartedly. And what's also, like you said, your job is to raise the most amount of money possible at auction, at the fund and need portion, the paddle raise portion, consulting pre-event and making sure we have the right revenue enhancers in the room all the way start to finish. That's our job too. That's what's so cool about how symbiotic your role is and ours, and how when we work together, it's 1 + 1 = 10. And so there's so much symmetry there. And I've always really, really enjoyed that. That's another great reason why we enjoy partnering with people like yourself. And that we get to have these conversations, like really peel the curtain back for folks. I'm just going to recap once again. We're here to bolster your auction, whether it's silent auction, live auction, all the above, revenue enhancers, not take away from. We're not anti-donation. That's for sure. Just want to set the record straight there. As a matter of fact, very, very pro getting the local chef dinner, things of that nature. You laid out some great examples as well. I want to talk about for folks maybe that have been exposed to consignment or whatever, and for folks that haven't, we'll speak to this, that no risk, I call it no exposure, piece as well. Your take on that, and then whatever I can layer in as well, I will. Yeah, man. Well, first of all, I do want to say that I'm actually pleased that you're having a consignment conversation with me, because I've been on Hey Nonprofits like 5 times now, and you're very careful about, you just want to add value and help these nonprofits. And so you don't oftentimes even bring up your stuff or let us even talk about it. So I'm glad that we're kind of having the conversation to be like, hey, this is a big part of what a fundraising auctioneer does.
like putting consignment items into my auction. I probably do that at 90% of my events. There's very few that don't do that because they need these trips that they can't get anymore.
Yeah.
So the no risk thing. Yeah. Well, first of all, we're not obligated to pay if we couldn't sell it. I have a brand new client. They're doing a very small event. So I do events of all sizes. I mean, I just did a children's hospital last weekend. You know that we did $3.5 million. This is a brand new event. They're going to be cocktail standing room only, are coming from all over. It's lawyers. So they're coming from all over to meet in Florida, which I'm licensed in Florida. And then they're going to be from all over. So we can't exactly have chef experiences or staycations or things like that. So we are going to be using all consignment items. All 7 items are going to be trips, because that's the easy way to do it. And one of the questions was, what happens if they don't sell? Do we have to pay for all of these trips that you're recommending to us? And the answer to that is no, there's no obligation. You don't pay for it unless you actually sell it. It would be extremely rare for me not to get the money out of a consignment item. I don't know if other auctioneers experience it. Maybe they do, but I don't really experience that in my group. I find that most people will come into an auction and they'll burn $3 to $5 grand easy in a live auction before they'll start drying up, you know? And so usually I can get to like $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 before they even start cutting out the bids. So I don't find that to be an issue, but they were asking, okay, what is the risk involved if we use these items? Well, a good auctioneer knows that, hey, we've got to get to a certain amount in order to actually sell this thing. I told you earlier, I'm trying to get to like double the amount, right? So I take a Punta Cana trip for $1,800. I'm trying to get to $4,000 before I even think about selling it. What would happen if I couldn't get there? If I just started the bidding and just nobody was bidding, right? Or like one person was bidding. Well, in our space, we're allowed to take a bid on behalf of the house. It's not chandelier bidding. I don't know if you ever heard that term, but chandelier bidding is actually illegal. You can't do that. Do you know?
No, I have not heard that.
Okay. No, Chandelier bidding is like when you're looking to the back of the room for a bidder who's not even there, and you're running up the price on the bidders just to increase the amount. That's illegal. Okay. So as a licensed auctioneer, if you hire a fundraising auctioneer, they wouldn't be doing that anyway to run up your guests.
Never heard that.
Yeah. But what is legal is something called bidding on behalf of the house. So in the event, I have had to do this before, just so you know, at a school auction before. But what was happening was I only had one bidder bidding. Nobody else was in for the item. We got up to, I want to say the reserve was like $3 grand, for instance. And I topped out at $2,000 or something like that, $2 grand with the bidder. But I knew I had to get to like 3,500 to sell it, right? Or it's like $2,500, and I had to get to like 3,500 to actually sell it and make money off of it. So what I did was I said, okay, he was in at 2,000. I said, hey, I hadn't hit what I could sell it for yet. I'll go 2,500 if you'll come back in at $3,000 and then get to the point where I could sell it. Or it might've been like he was in at 2,500. And I was like, hey, I'll go 3,000. If you'll come in at 3,500, I can sell it to you. So if you talk to them and let them know, they don't have to know auction practices and don't have to know it well, but you can take bids on behalf of the house if you have a single bidder. And then if they really want the item, I just tell them, hey, I'm not there yet. I can't sell it at $2,500, but I'll go 3,000. If you go 3,500, I can sell it to you because they're the only bidder. And they hit the mark and then we sell it, right? If it doesn't sell, if they don't want to do it, no harm, no foul. We say, all right, thanks for letting me show it to you. You know, if you do have interest in this, make sure you talk to one of our volunteers. They can bring it back for you, or you can go ahead and buy that outright for $3,500. But that's what I got to get for it in order to sell it. We'll pass on this one. Let's bring up the next item. And it's easy. It's just like, keep it going.
Like you said, I think you said it beautifully, and you laid out a really good scenario too, actually, for the live auction listeners as well, is that, you know, there's no harm, no foul. No upfront, you know, go ahead.
Sorry, if I can just expound on that. I just think that a lot of auctioneers who hadn't been in this game, again, you know, I used to sell art. So there was not everything in an art auction. You're showing probably 100 to 200 artworks, right? Not everything's going to sell. We're passing on a ton of stuff. We're getting bidders on stuff. We're not hitting the reserve on stuff. So that was a common practice for us. So I think a lot of times other auctioneers don't know how to handle that, and it makes them a little nervous. Oh, what if this stuff doesn't sell? So I want to alleviate that pain a little bit to say most of the time, there's only been like one, maybe 2 times where I hadn't been able to hit the reserve and had to pass on something. Usually somebody in the audience really wants those trips and you're going to get the money out of them.
This segues us really nicely into a topic I want to talk about from like a consultative perspective as well. For folks that are on the fence, maybe have never used consignment before, they're considering it for the live auction, silent auction, all the above. And I want to tie a bow on the no exposure, no risk piece as well. However, if folks are just like, I'm not sure if we have those kinds of bidders in our room, you know, my brain, my consultative approach goes to, okay, well, what have we sold in the past? Like what is let's get lost in the data. Let's see where some, the vacation home or the concert tickets that were donated or what have you went for in previous years, just so we can really identify. Of course, we want to get on the phone and invite the, people with capacity to
Yeah.
join us the evening of and all that great stuff, right? Which is a whole nother conversation. But how are you consulting folks that, let's just say, for lack of a better term, there's on the fence a little bit? They're like, I'm not sure if we have those kinds of bidders. How are you encouraging them to find out if they do, to create a scenario where they get those kinds of bidders in the room, stuff like that?
Yeah. If they're a gala, this is not their inaugural event, they've done one before, that's easy. I just go to previous auction history and I look at it and I say, well, first of all, if they had a professional auctioneer versus they let, a local weather lady or weatherman do the auction, right? So right off the bat, I can look at those and I can be like, okay, if you had a nobody person or just a board member, somebody do it, and they're hitting, $1,000, $1,500, something like that, I'm probably going to get double what they are at minimum. So I start thinking to myself, okay, some of the lower consignments would work for them. But if they had a previous auctioneer who did a nice job, and you look at some of those past ones and you're like, there's no consignment in here, but you look at the auction results and they're selling stuff for $5,000 to $10,000, you're like, that's easy. We can throw this in there, and they're definitely going to take that. If they're a brand new event like the one that I'm talking about now, where we have no expectation of results, we don't know what to expect, then what I've done there is I've sent them all lower price consignment items. For instance, I sent them the all-inclusive Punta Cana trip, because $1,800, I'm like, there's not a chance in a room full of 200 lawyers that I can't hit $4,000, $5,000 on selling an all-inclusive. It's just not.
Right.
So I just tend to start them out with lower priced consignment, lower reserve consignment items, so that I know, once we hit $4,000, I can sell it, but then I can just keep running it up until it tops out.
I want to touch on a red flag too, actually, if you're working with a consignment company or considering it, and there's no data to suggest that you have $10,000 level givers in your room yet. We hope that you do one day and then some, but folks are just, filling up your event, high pressure, cold calling you and stuff like that, filling up your event with very, very high dollar reserve price items. Please beware of that, right? Because they're doing that for their agenda, not for the, for the betterment of your mission, of your organization, of your event. So just a quick red flag there. Just as if folks are filling up your event or attempting to, I say fill up or, add items to your event just for the sake of them, having a high ticket price, please beware. And then, hey, reach out to Dan, reach out to myself. We're available to have that conversation and to go over it with you as well. I want to tie a bow on the no exposure thing, because I love the example, for instance, when I've had the good fortune of talking to organizations where I say, yeah, no risk, no upfront cost. Sure. I'm not in love with the no risk phrase. And I know you know that. I say no exposure. And the cool thing about no exposure is, like I always use a silent auction scenario where it's like, hey, we have these great posters. You put them on your silent auction table, super silent, vacation station, whatever you want to call it, and we'll test them there. If we get no bids, that's not what I want, of course. And that doesn't happen very often if we do it right. But I say there's no exposure because, once again, no harm, no foul. You're out nothing if you receive no bids. Okay. Yeah. One other interesting point too, though, Dan, I want to talk about with the idea of any item for that matter, but especially what we see when we're coaching up organizations is if you get that room full of attorneys, for instance, and someone raises their paddle at $5,000 that has never been to the event. Maybe the executive director and the board have never met this individual before. They're a guest of a friend or what have you. And they put their paddle in the air at $5,000 and bought the Punta Cana trip or the Tuscany trip. You just identified a $5,000 level giver. You know what I mean? Whether you want to call it mid-level. Yeah. I mean, that's massive. And you can do that in the silent auction too. So I don't think that can be understated as well. Love that.
Yeah. And it's hard because I can't quantify this because I don't have statistics for it, but you're saying, oh, that bidder, he's brand new. They haven't bid in the past. And for me, I'm thinking to myself, we might not have ever had that bidder if it wasn't for the trip.
Exactly.
That person's not necessarily, like, the silent auction's fun for people, but the silent auction, it goes after a certain type of person. A lot of times they're looking for a bargain. They want to. But when you get to live auction, they're not looking for a bargain. They're looking to show off a little bit. They're looking to run the bids up and have a lot of fun. And then you got your paddle raise donor who is like your philanthropic person. They just want to donate because they love the charity, right? But identifying that bidder, if you didn't have that vacation package in the silent auction, they are likely not going to be your person who was ever going to buy a basket full of gift cards.
Right.
I don't mean to bash everybody's basket full of gift cards.
No, I mean, people be thoughtful about it. Less is more
Yeah.
sometimes, especially with the silent. That's for sure. That sounds unpopular coming from my perspective too, but less is more, and being
Yeah.
strategic with, once again, experiences outperform stuff. But yeah, just the identification piece, because everyone's using software as well, and you can get lost in the
Mhm.
data post event. You can, obviously, it's a good reason that for outreach and all these great things. And I think these items just are, I've always called them a consignment opportunity, a value add. It's a
Yeah.
fundraising tool. You know what I mean? If I got to go back in time and create the terms that we use to describe these things, once again, these are fundraising tools, and you're
Yeah.
proving it in real time, and we get to do it with you, that they work. So that's really, really
Mhm.
cool. I appreciate what you said, because we are not very good at self promotion, but I do feel like we have had a tremendous amount of experience helping folks raise money especially over like the last half a dozen years, for instance, coming out of COVID, and the rubber band that has snapped back so aggressively with the alacrity and people's clamoring to move about and travel and what have you. I want to talk about something that is very, very important to me. I want to get your perspective on it first, and how important the donor experience needs to be when you're choosing a consignment partner. We don't need to get into nightmares or anything like that. I can talk
Right.
about,
I've got
how
nightmares.
seriously we take this, because the greatest equity that any organization has, whether that's a new attendee to your event or a lifelong supporter, the most important equity that you have is with your donors, with your supporters, your stakeholders, the people
Mhm.
that care and would, that bleed for your mission, so to speak. Why is that so important when choosing a consignment partner?
Well, if you do events over and over and over like I do, and I sell a vacation experience, and then the next year that donor comes back and has had a terrible experience, that's the last time I'm working with that consignment partner. I understand that sometimes things might go sour or whatever, but that's why I like you guys so much, because you got your own in-house concierge team. So I know that when they're booking, they're at least dealing with like real people in your company that can help them with the trip experience, and take care of anything that may or may not happen, right? But those horror stories, unfortunately, they've happened to me. I mean, I've been doing this for 18 years now, and
Yeah.
I will tell you, there's at least two consignment companies that I will not work with. Even if they have them in their silent auction, I'll tell them they have to get rid of them, or I'm not going to be their auctioneer. Now, I know that sounds a little bit pompous and probably a little bit obnoxious, but for guest experience, for us, that is the most important thing. It should be the most important thing for the nonprofit. And when you invite these people in their space, and I'm not going to name any names, but as an example, you and I have discussed this before. There was one that comes in, and they usually send somebody, high pressure salesperson, and they'll do these, I guess you call them a vacation station, but it's a silent auction. They're bringing all these trips, right? So they'll have 10 trips. And like we said, there's no risk involved in these, but the thing is they are pricing these trips. You might have like a $4,000 trip, and they're starting the bid on that package at 4,200. Well, as soon as one bidder bids on that, that's $200 to the nonprofit and $4,000 taken out of the room. And there's a
Right.
company out there that does this relentlessly, pressures people to start the bidding on these trips so they can sell them, and then they'll end up cutting a massive check to the consignment company and make nothing. You got a horror story about that. And
Yeah.
recently, I had
Yeah.
a group. So I had seen this. So anyway, I don't work with that company, and I make sure that nobody else works with that company either.
Yeah.
And I think it's very important, because we're talking about guest experience. These people are going to see me again the next year, and I'm the person they're going to remember that sold the trip, right?
Totally.
If they had a
Yeah.
bad experience, they're coming after me. So I'm very
Yeah.
careful about my consignment partners and who I work with.
Agreed on all counts. It's this. Well, they're serving their purpose and not the purpose of the organization. We are so persistent and so passionate about the donor experience that we have created a scenario. I appreciate the kind words about the concierge team that make everyone in
Mhm.
our organization look like gold, because they literally bend over backwards for the donors and the donor
Mhm.
experience. Just a couple bullet points about what HGA does as well is, we reach out to donors immediately post event, right? And I'm going to give these bullets as in, you want to create a partnership with a consignment provider that does these things, and if they don't, that's an issue.
Yeah,
So
agreed.
we think the worst thing in customer service is silence. So a lot of organizations, a lot of consignment organizations, pardon me, will not reach out to donors post event until they've been compensated for their items. I think that's a very bad practice, because you could end up
Yeah.
having someone that bought a $5,000 level, sorry to be so opinionated, but I really am, a $5,000 item, but they don't get contacted by the hospitality team with the organization until funds have cleared and all that good
Right.
stuff. Not through the organization from the event, but with the consignment partner, which could take 30, 45 days. Well, that leaves a really bad taste in my mouth if I paid $5,000 or more for an
Yeah.
item. Once again, the worst thing in customer service is silence. Another really cool, hallmark as well, or our approach is our items are our items. That means we create them, we procure them
Mm,
ourselves. We've had opportunities to sell other people's stuff, I call it, other
mhm.
consignment company stuff, and we've abstained every time, whether it was a good business decision or not. We feel like it was the right one, and it's playing out very, very well over time for the organizations that we get the opportunity to help and partners that sell our items. So what I mean by that is a lot of shops will sell each other's stuff, put their
I've
margins
seen it.
on it.
I know.
Yes, yes. And listen, they actually might be well-intended shops. However, for the donor experience, that means if there is an issue, if there's political unrest in Mexico, if there's a hurricane, if God forbid you can't travel to the destination like we had in Italy during COVID, and a
Mhm.
donor has a question, well, it's going to the consignment partner that sold it, for instance, maybe even going to the auctioneer or the group first. But then those questions can't be answered directly because there's third parties involved.
Right.
So I
Yeah.
hope that I did a good job of explaining that you need to be very, very conscious and ask questions about the donor experience. Are there any third party interactions? Will you be the ones, you being the consignment partner, booking this experience? And then what's cool about, for us, I sound like I'm on a soapbox, but what's cool about our position with how we treat the donor experience is, A, we give folks 24 months to book their trip, so the better part of 3 years to take it. And we also give them an extension because there are items. If life happens, someone gets sick, they break a leg, which all of these things have happened. Unfortunately, it's life and have happened to donors. We're able to extend those packages, number one. And then number two, if anything, if, hey, I got to my room and the AC is not working, well, they can call our concierge team and they don't have to go through,
Yeah.
4 different people to get the answer. The solution and the service is the most important piece that they deserve. So very, very dogmatic about that, as you can tell, but things and questions you need to be asking your consignment partners early and often in the process before you start choosing items. Absolutely.
And with you guys owning your own, having those properties, and they're your properties that you guys have negotiated those deals with and
Correct.
been to them and seen them and stuff, that gives auctioneers a lot of confidence, because a lot of times we get hit up by consignment companies all the time. Sell our
Hmm.
stuff, sell our stuff, especially if we do a lot of events and a lot of high profile events. They just want to be able to like get in with us. And so we see that a lot. But for us, one of the things that I like most about you guys, it is that concierge team, because not only are you controlling the quality of your product, but I know that there isn't a third party involved. And so I know the experience is going to be good. That's why I like it. And another thing I want to say is because we didn't touch on this, but there's another company out there that throws the free trip, right?
Yeah.
Hey, we'll give you these trips, you sell these trips, and then it's just fully gifted to you by us. I would say be careful with them. That's another organization that I tend to stay away from. I know that a lot of our listeners probably know who I'm talking about, but when they're offering up those free trips, those trips are not free. They are charging your guests on the back end.
Yep.
There is a fee. What do they call that hotel fee where you got to pay that every
Well,
day?
there's resort fees,
Yeah,
there's hidden
resort fee,
fees,
a
there's
daily fee,
time. Yeah, all
yeah,
those things.
booking fee, $300, $400 a day. And then
Yeah,
by the time you end up doing it, I've sold the trip for $5,000. They've tacked on an additional $3,000-$4,000 plus the flights that the guest has to get over there. They're looking at $8,000-$9,000 for this trip that got for free, and the nonprofit only made a few $1,000s for it, and it's charging your guests like crazy. So I would say
agreed.
be careful of that. Now, I'm not saying that free is not good, because there are a couple of consignment partners that we have that if we sell a certain amount, like if we were able to sell 7 in one auction, then they would donate an extra one for the nonprofit. Like one of them they
Sure.
wouldn't pay for. And I think that's a great way to do it. It incentivizes auctioneers to try to sell more for the nonprofit, because the more people we can get involved in it, then they just make that money back. They don't pay the $2,500 reserve fee, right? I think
Sure.
that's great.
No, totally. And like you said, my big thing was if a consignment company is cold calling you and their first line is that they want to give you something for free, that's a red flag,
For
right?
me, it is. Yeah,
Yeah,
for me,
yeah.
I think it should be for the
That's how I
nonprofit as
feel.
well.
Yeah, that's how I feel. You said
Nothing's really
something very
free.
you said something very subtle about properties. Like let's just say it's a villa, but there's only one. And I have some opinions about this just rooted in experience, and I want to talk to the audience and I want to get your feedback from it too.
Okay.
Now, listen, I think single property villas that are offered by consignment companies are fine, okay?
Mm-hmm.
However, there is a caveat. The caveat being, if it's one destination, one residence, for instance, in a destination, that item can only be sold so many times. There's only 52 weeks in a year. There are other people that are not going to fundraising events that are wanting to go to that property where it's been sold. You can rest assured of that. So it's just a word of the wise. It's like, if you have a single property or vendor, a consignment vendor with one property, for instance, you need to know how many times that item is being sold throughout the year, because what you're going to end up having an issue with is availability for your donors. You're going to have ticked off donors, poor experience. They're going to come back to you, no good. So
it becomes like an Airbnb at that point. There's only so many weekends out of the year. And if there's blackout dates, there's only so much time that people can travel in the summer months or whenever the time they can get off. And so they're all competing for the same property. Yeah, that's a tough one.
Yeah. So, I mean, and I'll go ahead and tell you, I mean, from research and having these different opportunities and what have you, when it comes to private residences, the most a private residence can be sold in a calendar year is about 30 times.
Yeah.
Right. And if there's any restrictions or what have you, so, you get someone that's as talented as you selling a private residence and you do it in a few events, that's it. There are no more. Right. So we really want to be concerned and question the capacity of those different private residences and destinations, not because they're not good, but because they can get oversold, and that ends up being a big issue for your donors. Go ahead. Yeah. Anything?
Well, there's a couple of things. Like, as you were talking, I've been writing stuff down because you hit on all these things, and I'm like, I want to say something about that. I want to say something about that. And then, like, we didn't focus on it. We just kept going.
Hit us.
Another thing that I, just for the nonprofits out there that are listening and trying to figure out what's right for them, don't get caught up in some of these companies that are like trying to sell you on these ideas of these super exclusive premium packages that might cost you $15,000, $17,500, right? It might not be the best fit for you. There are organizations that are few and far between that can handle that type of reserve price. And again, you're trying to make the money on the spread, right? That means if you're getting a $15,000 item, you're trying to get up to 30 grand before you sell it, right? So we can at least make money off of it. So I got an auctioneer buddy of mine, I'm not going to say his name, but he did it recently, and the consignment company's like, oh, you got to sell this the Wimbledon trip. It's going to be great for your group. And he was like, I didn't ask the price. And then I'd pitched to the client, and the client loved it. And then it was like $15,000. And I was like, you need to get 30 grand out of that thing before you can sell it to make it worthwhile. And he was all, concerned about it. Anyway, long story short, the client was good enough. They had good enough buyers in the room, but it ended up being only 2 buyers that ended up running it up. And he did end up selling it for 30 grand. So it worked out. It was fantastic, but it's not for everybody. And what if he didn't have that second bidder? And those 2 bidders weren't going up and running up against each other. And he had a $15,000 consignment, and he topped out at 17.5. Then he's got $2,500 for the nonprofit. Everything's not the right fit. Just because it's cool, just because it's a luxury property, you've got a great Costa Rica villa. It's like 25, 30. What is it? You know what I'm talking about?
It's like minimum 25,000. It's private chef,
incredible,
10 people,
incredible property. But I mean, I'm doing 50 auctions plus another dozen or so that I'm passing off, and I might have 3 of those that could handle that type. So don't get. I'm just trying to tell them not to get like the allure of these luxury properties. It might not be the right fit for you. A lot of times you can get those smaller items and get a lot more money from running it up in competitive bidding.
Agreed. And you keep coming back to the just such a good point of like, what is the best thing for the organization? What is going to be the best outcome? That's absolutely the approach. It's the approach that every consignment company should have. And if they don't have it, once again, ask Dan, ask us. Happy to go over anything with you, and don't succumb to pressure for the sake of, once again, that flashy item, for instance. What's really, really cool, Dan, I want to talk about this too, is also I'm very, very bullish on the idea of using these kinds of experiences to promote your event, pre-event. And I think you should do that, whether it's the donated concert tickets, the chef's experience, all of these. It's just another touch point for you to get in front of your attendees, supporters, new donors, all the above, pre-event, when they walk into the event, all the above. So use these experiences as a promotional tool to stoke the fire, because you're preparing bidders. I've always said that when folks see cool experiences, they're figuratively packing their bags. Even if the bidding is not open pre-event for the live auction, show people the live auction items. I think it's a really, really underutilized approach from a marketing standpoint as well. Yeah,
I agree. We call it dripping in the sales world. We're like dripping it along until we actually reveal the item, right? But I see a lot of good organizations now when they're sending out emails and e-blasts, they're featuring the live auction items, and they might feature the Italy trip, or they might feature the Punta Cana trip, and they'll show people that and be like, to get them thinking about that. Okay, I'm not even there yet, but this is something I want to bid on. And
Yeah.
I think that's a great way to do it. And then when you get there, I've starting to see a lot of organizations will have like the big posters, these giant 5 foot by 4 foot posters that have bullets of, this is for 6 nights for 2 people. It's all inclusive, 12 months to book, 24 months to travel, all that good stuff with these beautiful images. That's what you want to see, is the emails, and then the cardboard, displays, or whatever, cardboard displays, but displays. Exactly.
Yeah, for the folks that are watching on YouTube, I had to grab just like a really cool poster that has like QR code technology, all that good stuff. Yeah,
it's great.
Sure. Hey, that's another like bullet point for folks listening. It's like, make sure that folks have great consignment companies that you're thinking about partnering with or do partner with, that they have video, that they have a ton of images, great descriptions, the posters, the whole night. We call it a media kit. And I absolutely think that should be used, and twist the dial on that big time. So yeah, another good word to the wise. Make sure you have good marketing, good media that you can utilize. I love video during the live auction. I'm thinking
that's underused a lot, Trevor. A lot of times people just use static images. Like for us, for auctioneers, we need to have the static image of all the great photos behind. And I always tell my nonprofit organizers, I always tell them, when you're putting up photos of the trip, the package, whatever it is, they want to see the location, they want to see what the room looks like, they want to see the luxurious pool, they want to see the beach. Put those images in there, bulletize what you have. But if you have video in marketing, and I worked in marketing years ago, and we knew that a video has an 80% higher conversion rate than a static image. So when you put video out there, people are 80% more likely to engage with that than they would a static image. Putting that in your auction and showing people how awesome this trip is, and then letting me sell it, is going to go a lot further than just having these static images. People
no question. Yeah, we were. I invested so much money in video years ago. Yeah, and of course, video's probably a lot less expensive now. Our team does it for every experience, so that's really cool.
That's great.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's really good. I think that we can tie a bow on it. I want folks to hang in there, because Dan and I are going to do a little bonus as well for the listeners, but we'll tie a bow on setting the record straight about consignment here. And then let's continue the conversation. You'll have plenty of ways that you can reach out to Dan in the show notes as well, and to us at HGA Fundraising. HGA Fundraising powers this Hey Nonprofits network. So really cool. Glad we got to set the record straight. It's long overdue. And hopefully folks got a ton of value out of it. Yeah, so I appreciate you doing it with us, man.
Yeah, thanks, Trevor. Thanks for having me again, man.
Appreciate you. All right, hang in there for the bonus, everybody. Hang tight. Okay, as mentioned, bonus. And Dan and I see this, and we think it's a travesty. I'm using the T word, but it's a travesty to see what happens with consignment items in the silent auction / online auction. I think they're breeding the same auction these days. I hope folks are selling their silent auction items online. With regard to consignment items in the silent auction, you actually lay this out as an illustration in the live too, where you want the items to sell for as much money as possible. The one big issue that we see time and time again, unfortunately, we really want to use this as an opportunity to help folks and educate folks that are using consignment items in their silent auction, is to open the bidding. And we say 25%, 20 to 25%. Is a really great way to start. And what I mean by that, let's just take a $2,000 reserve price consignment item, Dan. We're thinking opening up the bidding at $500. I want you to explain to folks why that's a good idea. So the minute you get a bid, you're in the money. You're already profiting $2,500. You get a bid, there's probably going to be more behind, so we can get into bidding increments and all that good stuff. But why do we want to open the bidding? Not at the reserve price, which we see folks do, regardless how many times we shake them by the shoulder, so to speak, and say, don't do that. 25% above the reserve price is the right way to start. Talk to folks about your experience with that, please.
Well, because in a live auction, it's a lot easier when there's excitement, there's social proof, there's a lot of competition, people really get into it. It's easy, it's exciting to get people involved. So it's easy to get those bids. It's easy to run the price up, and it's easy to play people off each other. Well, a lot of times people see that, and then they take vacations and experiences and put it in their silent auction, and they think it's going to be the same. But you don't have anybody leading that charge, right? So sometimes you may only get one bid. Now, what started all this was you and I having the conversation where I told you that I have school that, first of all, let me back up and say, I'm a big fan of putting experiences and vacations in silent auction. I
We are
think that
too.
people should do that. I think
Yeah.
it gives people something better than just the gift
The
cards
basket.
that you
Yeah. Yeah.
see, the
Yeah.
basket,
Yeah.
right? And I think there's people out there that want to do that and they don't want to do it in live auction. They'll do it in a silent auction. So big fan of that. But what happens is people are doing it wrong. They're expecting that same kind of engagement that you get in a live auction. You don't always have that. So this school is a good example because they had a bunch of trips in their silent auction, which was great, but they started the bidding at basically the reserve of what the consignment price was, not even marking it up. You have to start your reserve, what you could actually sell it at, where you're making money. Like you said, $2,000 item, you're starting it at $2,500, already in the money. The next bid on it's $3,000. The next bid on it's $3,500. Next bid on it's $4,000. Great, you made money. Cool thing about that is, like we said beforehand, not only have you identified potentially a new bidder, you also are able to track the underbidders, right?
Yeah.
So you can see, hey,
Yeah.
somebody dropped out at $3,500. Somebody dropped out at $3,000. Well, can we go back to them at that point and be like, would you still be interested in this? Make extra money on the back end? I don't know. Or just identify them and say, hey, would you be willing to donate that to our organization?
Have a conversation. I love that. I love that so much. I'm a big fan of meeting them where they're at. So what Dan was just talking about is like, and let's just say for illustrative purposes, we have our bidding increments for an item that has a $2,000 level reserve price. Bids start at $2,500. Let's just say they're $100 bidding increments. Okay. And we have someone that wins at $3,500. Fantastic. They're going home with a really great experience, and the organization netted $1,500. And let's just say we have someone at $3,400. My big approach is meet them where they're at, ask them if they're still good at $3,400. If you disagree, please speak up, but meet them where they're at and sell that item again. If it's a consignment item, you can sell items more than once in the silent auction too, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. I will never disagree with you on making more money for the organization.
Right, exactly.
I tell people this is a terrible way to say this, but organizations always give me goals. They're like, oh, our goal is 500,000 or our goal is 300,000. And I have to say it nicely, but I'm like, I'm glad that you have a goal, but it's pretty irrelevant to me because my goal is to take all the money out of the room and make people happy that they gave. Right?
Yeah.
So absolutely. When you're talking about, hey, can we go back to that underbidder and say, hey, would you be willing to do this at $3,400 still, or even $3,300, whatever those bidders came in at, and allowing them to donate to the organization and make extra money? Absolutely, man. I think that's great. I think it's overlooked, and I think you need to have your donor development people go back and check the underbids and see if we can sell them again.
Love that. I also love the idea of identifying, let's just say, for instance, they haven't been to your event before. You just identified at the $3,400 or $3,500 level, maybe a new potential mid-level, could be a lifelong supporter, of course. They might not have ever been to your event before, but they weren't going to buy the basket because they go to other events and they have the baskets, for instance, but you have an experience there. And so you can identify and meet a new donor at that level that was willing to give your organization $3,400, $3,500. Amazing. Yeah. I also like this too. And because you're such a strong live auction fundraiser and practitioner, and I'm a student, is I love the idea of using the silent auction, especially with consigned items, trips and experiences like ours, for instance, as a proving ground, as a testing ground for potential live auction items in the future, because you are playing a 12, 24, 36 month strategy or game, so to speak, with your event. So put the Iceland item up in your silent auction. And if you get 8 bidders, then that could have been a really cool live auction item, and it can be in the future as well. Talk about that.
It's a great testing ground.
Yeah.
A lot of nonprofits now are putting multiple auction packages consignment packages in their auction, because you can put 10 of them out there, for instance. And as you mentioned, there's no risk involved.
No exposure.
If they sell, fantastic. If they don't, then we got to test them. But I see that happen a lot. The school charity that I was talking about last year, they had that, and there was like 10 of them. And like 2 of them didn't sell, but then you had like 3 or 4 that had crazy competitive bidding on, right? Crazy. Yes. And then you could look at that and be like, this is pretty popular. Maybe this should be a live auction item next year. I think it's great. There's no risk to the donors. They get to put something out there for their attendees that they wouldn't normally be able to get. And now all of a sudden you've got people bidding on a trip to Africa or a trip to Costa Rica or a trip to Punta Cana. It's a no-brainer, I think.
We're if you're on the fence about adding consignment items to your live auction, of course we want you to do that, and we think there's great potential there. Once again, if you're on the fence, you just want to test, put the trips and experiences in your silent auction. Let's see what happens. As Dan mentioned, no exposure, no risk if they don't sell. So you're out nothing. You've created a, once again, for the folks that are watching, and for the folks that are listening, I'm holding up a poster board. You put up a board, and whether it's paper bidding sheets or folks are using mobile bidding, then so be it. Very, very low lift and very, very low time expenditure as far as procurement and the booking piece and all that good stuff. So hope everyone enjoyed
before you
bonus
jump,
section. No, I want you to tie a bow on it, brother. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll tie a bow on it. So I think that a lot of times some of our nonprofit organizations have this mental block of, if they put something like that in the silent auction, they're pulling money out of the room that would have gone to the paddle raise. We get that a lot, right?
Yeah.
It's common. I wish I had statistics to prove it. All I can say is what I found is when you offer these kind of items, you are essentially getting bidders that would not have been there. So consignment allows you to pick up bidders that aren't always going to participate. They're not necessarily going to take that $2,500 and put it in the paddle raise. They're not necessarily going to get in competition with somebody in the live auction. Those are two different types of bidders. The people that are going after silent auction type items, drinking, hanging out in the cocktail, they're looking, hey, I can do this now and I can get into a no conflict, easy win situation, almost like a buy it now, eBay, hide behind the scenes and do this without having to do it in a live setting. What I've seen is there's been no indication that putting consignment items in your auction hurts the paddle raise. I've not seen in any of my auctions a drop off in it. I've only ever seen increase. So I can't attribute this anything other than the sales fact that when you get people to start spending, they carry on spending. And so if you can lock them in the silent auction, have a cool silent auction, they're more likely to be like, oh, we've already bought this thing for $3,000. Let's raise our bid paddle at $2,500 when the auctioneer asks for it. Had a good time, boom, and you got more money.
Love it. Love it.
Don't be scared of adding consignment to your silent or your live. I think it only ever generates more money for my clients. So I'm a very big advocate of it.
I can't expand on that any further. That was perfect. Hey, I didn't know it was going to go perfect, man. Thank you so much. Hey, thanks everybody for tuning in. Do us a favor, reach out to Dan. Thank him for his expertise, for his time. Reach out to Dan for your event. Any feedback that you need or any help or any tutelage, he's the man. Please do so. And, we'll have Dan's LinkedIn profile, website, all that good stuff in the show notes. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. This concludes our Setting the Record Straight About Consignment episode. Appreciate you all so much. Thank you so much. Happy fundraising, and we'll see you all next time. Thanks, Dan.
Bye. See ya.
Good stuff.